Hello, One Great Earth. My name is Dan, and today we're going to talk a bit about elephants. As this article from NPR, All Things Considered, by Nell Greenfield Boyce. Wild elephants seem to address each other using distinctive rumbling sounds that could be akin to individual names. That's according to a provocative new study in the journal Nature, Ecology, and Evolution, which was inspired by earlier work showing that bottlenose dolphins have signature whistles. Sometimes another bottlenose dolphin will imitate somebody else's signature whistle in order to get their attention, so effectively calling them by name. Says Mickey Pardo, a biologist at Cornell University. He wondered if elephants, which are known to be vocal mimics, might do something similar. The idea from the outset of the project was to try to figure out if elephants have names. He means names that the elephants call themselves, rather than names like Margaret and Mary that researchers working in nature preserves have given them. Elephants' trumpeting is well known, but Pardo says trumpeting is an absurd noise that's more like screaming or laughing. He figured that if elephants had names, they'd be somehow encoded in elephants' constant low-frequency rumblings. The rumblings themselves are highly structurally variable. There's quite a lot of variation in their acoustic structure. Elephants make these particularly noises in all kinds of contexts. Everything from greeting family members to comforting a calf to staying in touch with relatives over long distances. So Pardo and some colleagues analyzed recordings of 469 rumbling calls that wild African elephants had made to each other in the Amboseli National Park and Samburu and Buffalo Springs National Reserves in Kenya between 1986 and 2022. For every recorded call, the researchers knew the identity of the elephant making the rumble as well based on the context the elephant was being addressed. If elephants had names, not every call would be expected to contain one, just like people don't use each other's names every time they speak to each other. Still, the research team used machine learning to see if their rumblings contained identifying information, essentially a name, that their computer model could learn to use to accurately predict the receiver of a call. What they found is their model is able to identify the correct elephant recipient of the call 27.5% of the time, which is much better than it performed during a control analysis that fed it random data, said Pardo. This indicates, he says, that there must be something in the calls that's allowing the model to figure out at least some of the time that who calls was addressed to. Researchers then did fieldwork to see if 17 elephants, all female except for one, might recognize their own names and react preferentially to recordings that contained those sounds. We had to find a situation where a specific elephant was by herself, or at least no one with the individual was made the recording, he says, explaining that the team would then play the recording through a loudspeaker. They used different recordings on different days, depending on the day that the elephant would either hear a recorded call that was originally addressed to her or hear a call made by the same elephant that was not intended for her. And it turns out, the elephants generally seemed to know when a rumbling message was actually meant for them, suggesting that it contained something like a name. When they heard these calls, they approached the loudspeaker more quickly. They also vocalized the reply more swiftly and made more response calls. The elephants responded much more strongly on average to playbacks of calls that were originally addressed to them relative to playbacks of calls from the same caller that was originally addressed to someone else. The results of these playback experiments looked very convincing, says Carl Berg, a biologist at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. I have no doubts that they're addressing them with these names, unique labels. Now, are they nicknames? Are they names? Where do they come from? Berg wasn't part of this research, but has studied how wild parrot nestlings acquire unique signature calls, aka names, by slightly modifying the signature call of their caregivers. He notes that in this elephant study, rumblings containing information often seemed to be generated by mothers who were dressing their calves. A good bit of this was between the moms and their calves. It sure seems like they might be getting it from mom. So far, though, no one has been able to figure out exactly what acoustic features in an elephant's low-frequency rumblings might equate to a name. I'd really like to able to isolate the name of a specific individual elephant, says Pardo, because if we could do that, we could answer a lot of other questions that we weren't able to fully figure out in the study. It's not clear, for example, if elephants all use the same name when addressing the same recipient. The researchers also don't know if elephants talk to each other in the third person. Do they ever use somebody's name when they're not there? Berg notes that animals that use name-like sounds, humans, dolphins, parrots, and now elephants, are all intelligent, long-lived social animals that live in stable groups. But that doesn't mean that all of these creatures use names exactly the same way. People might assume that elephants' names work exactly the same way as human names, which is not necessarily true. After all, he notes, humans and elephants are separated by tens of millions of years of evolution, and that's a pretty long time. Very interesting. Which leads into our next article. How elephants use their feet to hear rainstorms 100 kilometers away. Not just hearing other elephants and other noises, but they can identify fruit dropping off a tree into the ground, raindrops from 60 miles away, just by using their feet and pressing them into the ground. Feet smush against the ground and push up. They get a really good grip on the land. During periods of intense drought, African elephants use this unexpected body part to find water. Dust devils swirl across the dry landscape, throwing clouds of sandy debris up from the parched earth. The heat warps and distorts the air. Vultures squabble over an animal carcass found during this blistery drought. In the distance, elephants march across the land in the search of much-needed water. This harsh, dry season is a difficult time for the entire herd. The young cows are especially vulnerable, as their mother's milk will dry up if water is not located soon. Fanning their ears to relieve themselves of the heat, they continue to wander, hoping to hear the sound that would spell relief. 100 kilometers away, dark clouds gather and the sky crackles with lightning. Heavy raindrops spatter against the cracked ground, filling once empty pools of water. This is what the elephants have been listening for. They can hear the storm as low-frequency vibrations, not through the air, but through the ground. In this excerpt of Hunter and Hunted, the first episode of Secret World of Sound, a series from The Nature of Things, we can witness exactly how the elephants are able to do this. Despite supporting the weight of the largest land animal, the elephant's uniquely designed feet possesses an intricate combination of tissues that allows them to locate storms and water from 100 kilometers away. Nerve endings in the skin and fatty cushions of the elephant's feet are responsive to pressure and movement, especially vibrations. By lifting one foot, they can press the other deeper into the ground and pinpoint the exact direction of the storm vibrations. With water at hand, the herd now heads towards the storm. One of the young calves stumbles, but its mother uses their trunk to push it along, encouraging the calf to finish the journey. Using their remarkable ability, these elephants have outlasted the drought. From Elizabeth Benner, from CBC.ca. Elephants can hear long-range distances in a frequency that we can't make out ourselves. We can record it and play it back. This is infrared sound. This is deep infrasound that the elephants are using to communicate and to hear. Very interesting. Elephants communicating and getting information from 100 kilometers away, that's incredible. You can hear raindrops literally in storms from miles away, just by it hitting the ground. Oh boy, The Guardian. Microplastics found in every human semen sample tested and studied. Chinese scientists say further research on potential harm to reproduction from contamination is imperative. Microplastic pollution has been found in all human semen samples tested in the study, and researchers say further research on the potential harm to reproduction is imperative. Sperm counts in men have been falling for decades, and 40% of low counts remain unexplained, although chemical pollution has been implicated by many studies. The 40 semen samples were from healthy men undergoing premarital health assessments in Jinan, China. Another recent study found that microplastics in the semen of 6 out of 10 healthy young men in Italy, and another study in China found the pollutants in half of 25 samples. Recent studies in mice have reported that microplastics reduce sperm count and cause abnormalities and hormone disruption. Research on microplastics in human health is moving quickly, and scientists appear to be finding out the contaminants everywhere. The pollutants were found in all 23 human testicle samples tested in a study published in May. Microplastics also recently have been discovered in human blood, placentas, and breast milk, indicating widespread contamination of people's bodies. The impact on health is not yet known, but microplastics have been shown to cause damage to human cells in the laboratory. Millions of tons of plastic waste are dumped in the environment, and much is broken down into microplastics. These have polluted the entire planet, from the summit of Mount Everest to the deepest oceans. People are known to consume the tiny particles via food and water, as well as breathing them in. As emerging research increasingly implicates microplastic exposure as a potential factor for impacting human health, understanding the extent of human contamination and its relation to reproductive outcomes is imperative. Mouse studies demonstrate a significant decrease in viable sperm count and an uptick in sperm deformities, indicating that microplastic exposure may pose a chronic cumulative risk to male productive health. The research published in the Journal of Science of the Total Environment detected 8 different plastics. Polystyrene, used for packaging, was most common, followed by polyethylene, used in plastic bags, and then PVC. The particles may be causing inflammation in tissue, as air pollution particles do, or the chemicals in the plastics can cause harm. In March, doctors warned of potentially life-threatening effects after finding a substantially raised risk of stroke, heart attack, and earlier death in people whose blood vessels were contaminated with microscopic plastics. Luigi Montana of the University of Rome, who led the Italian study, said, "Intervention is necessary to stop the exponential increase in plastic waste. More than 100 nations are negotiating a UN treaty to regulate plastic and cut pollution. In particular, there is a need for action to avoid additional permanent damage to the planet and the human body," Montana said. If microplastic pollution impacts the critical reproductive process, as evidenced in particular by the decline in seminal quality recorded in recent decades globally, it may prove to be even worse for our species in the not-too-distant future. That's terrifying. So every pair of balls has microplastics. I just can't help but think of the movie Children of Men, and how fertility is near zero. No children, no new babies. It's from The Guardian. Alright, that's all I have for now. I thank you for joining me. Please like the stream, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out immensely and keeps me motivated in putting out videos like this. All the balls. I have a new camera, so I am not having issues with lag. I'm not having issues with my camera blinking in and out of service, so this should be good. It should be a lot less frustrating to go live because I don't have to wait for my camera to be stable. Alright. Thank you. Please take care.